How do you put this all together?
Yeah, well, the Chief Justice did. He basically went to what he said was the core of the appeals court's reasoning, and he suggested there's not enough there.
Yeah.
And he raised the possibility of sending the case back to the appeals court to look more closely at the particular allegations against Donald Trump and trying to figure out which of them involve official acts and might be where you might have immunity for those, and which involve purely private acts, in which case a trial could go forward on those charges.
So it comes down to a question of if it were sent to the appeals back down to the lower court, how quickly they would make that decision, knowing that they don't technically have to decide until the end of the term, which is at the end of June, and then therefore how quickly that decision could be made. Just walk us through potentially the lengths of the timeline we're talking about here, knowing we're facing that November election.
Yeah, so if it were a normal case, this is the last argument of the term. Last argument of the term, I would say, yeah, it's probably not going to get decided until pretty, far into June, just because of the nature of things. They have a lot of decisions to deal with. Add to that this is a very weighty case, especially complicated, and I would say almost certainly the end of June. The only reason why they might rule sooner would be if they want to sort of push this process along so there can be a trial this year. I didn't hear anything in the courtroom today that suggested there was a lot of concern about that issue from particularly the conservative justices. So I'm not going to be holding my breath until we get it close to the end of June, and that's going to make it very, very hard to have a trial this year.
Just to make sure our viewers and listeners understand the menu of options here, you suggested it could be sent back to the appeals court. What else could the court do?
Well, it could. I mean, in theory, it could agree with Donald Trump and say the indictment should be dismissed. No indication that's going to happen. Yeah. What Jack Smith's office has been hoping for is that the court would agree with the D.C. Circuit very quickly, and that would mean the trial could go ahead. Mm-hmm. It also didn't sound like that was going to happen today. It sounded like there was enough skepticism of the appeals court decision, enough justices who were concerned, like Justice Kavanaugh, that you might be sweeping in future presidents who might face criminal liability for doing things within their job description. And the court seems like it is going to at least say, hey, go back and take a closer look at it. And again, that probably means the trial's not happening before the election.
Wow.
And we've all been focused on the fact that it's the Washington trial that Jack Smith brought, but he also brought charges against Donald Trump in the documents case down in Florida. This has implications for that too.
It does. Donald Trump is also arguing in that case it involved his official acts and he should be immune there. It's a different sort of argument because, much of the allegations there happened while he was out of office, after he had become a private citizen again. So it's probably a weaker argument for him in that case, but he's trying to make it, and certainly could affect it, very much could affect the Georgia case. And in fact, in the Georgia case, prosecutors may have an even harder time because it's not the federal government, it's the state government pressing those cases, those charges.
Yeah, but an important distinction is Donald Trump also couldn't pardon himself in the Georgia case because it's a state case, unlike these federal cases, should he become president again. Bloomberg's Greg Stohr has had a long day covering these arguments. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, it's worth pointing out that President Trump was not at the arguments at the Supreme Court today because he was in court in New York, meaning he was unable to officially campaign but still address the cameras and weighed in on his chances in the Empire State.
We're going to run very hard in New York. New York, we have a good chance of winning New York, in my opinion. I think we're going to do very well, and we're going to make a play for New York.
Joining us now for more is Bloomberg's Laura Davison, one of our politics editors. So, Laura, we know that New York is a pretty solidly blue state. It's also a state that Donald Trump doesn't have much love for, if you listen to his words, especially given that he is facing a criminal trial in the state. But once again, seeing the opportunity while he is not on the campaign trail, we heard from him multiple times today on the way in and on the way out. So to what extent is this actually impacting his 2024 bid?
He is able to get in front of cameras, multiple times a day, as you mentioned. We've seen him do now twice these little stops where he just, stops, on a, it was Harlem last week, this week, Midtown. Mm-hmm. And when you're in New York, you're within a couple miles of basically every major news network in the country. So instead of going to, rural Pennsylvania or rural Georgia, you can be in New York and get headlines, even if you're not necessarily interacting with voters. And that's been Donald Trump's campaign style anyways. He doesn't do a lot of retail politicking, shaking hands. He has these big rallies when he goes out places. Ironically, it's in New York where he's doing more of that, shaking hands. Today it was construction workers signing MAGA hats. And so this is able to, get him in front of a different audience and build a little bit of a different persona, and only taking, 30 minutes of his time.
Yeah. Did he say New York's going to be in play?
That's
that
what he
suggested?
Yes.
That would be absurd. Really, for bright blue New York, right?
It is
unlikely that he will be able to win New York. He lost it by 20 percentage points in 2020 to Joe Biden. There was a poll this week from the New York Times and Siena College that showed that was a 10 percentage point gap between Biden and Trump, with Biden in the lead. We'll see. Trump has talked about this for a long time, but this is not something that you should hold your breath for. That any major electoral college watchers are.
Well, I don't know.
planning.
Joe Biden says he's got Florida in play. Donald Trump's looking at New York. I guess anything could happen.
Well, we certainly know that to be true, Joe. You can never rule anything out. But speaking of Joe Biden, worth pointing out, he also was in New York State today. At first, he was up near Syracuse talking about money being spent for the CHIPS Act. And he's going to be holding a campaign event raising money in New York as well. They're not going to be too far from each other, but it does just show the contrast of the reasons why they are in New York. Biden is doing so with freedom. Trump is doing it because he has to be there.
Yes, and this is really, kind of who you see, where you see them going and who they're talking to also really speaks to their priorities. Trump was with construction workers talking about Joe Biden's, quote, failed economic policies. Yeah. Joe Biden is up in Syracuse talking about this new semiconductor investments, CHIPS money, talking about how he views his policies as succeeding. So this is, and then he's got a fundraiser this evening with some Hollywood movie stars in Westchester at a very nice event. So
So interesting you point out, though, that stop on the road today for Donald Trump was important when he was talking to those construction workers, some of them wearing red MAGA hats. They all had their phones up in the air. It was a celebrity sighting. They were chanting, "We love Trump." Those are moments that he can continue to reproduce even as this case continues, isn't it?
Yes, we anticipate that we'll see, these, throughout the next, 6 or so weeks of this trial, that he'll continue to do this. These are also ways that his team kind of personally is able to build up Trump. Court has been very draining on him. Going and sort of interacting with the crowds is a way that he kind of, builds a sense of self.
He says it's very cold in there. Are they keeping it too cold for him on purpose?
That's also been the report. Either been too cold or too hot. I think it's, this courtroom is sort of like your high school, and that the temperature control is never right.